I'm handcuffed face down on my own driveway while my 9-year-old daughter watches through our living room window as 3 cops arrest her dad, all because I told the HOA I'm not in your HOA. 6 a.m. Coffee still steaming on my porch. HOA President Constance Blackwood screaming at Officer Rodriguez, "He refuses to comply. Arrest him." I'd calmly explained I wasn't in their HOA, never had been. That's when she lost her mind and called the police. The diesel fumes from patrol cars mixed with that early morning dew smell as she waved HOA bylaws like they were federal law. My daughter's face pressed against the glass, watching Daddy get treated like a criminal for telling the truth. What Constance didn't know while she gloated? The property deed in my back pocket proved exactly what I'd said, and her false police report was about to trigger a federal lawsuit that would destroy her life. Ever told an HOA no and had them call the cavalry? Share your nightmare below. Subscribe. This revenge gets nuclear. My name's Marcus Rivera. Single dad, former Army engineer raising my daughter Sophia after her mom decided military life, and apparently responsibility, wasn't her thing. 3 years ago, I bought this 1970s ranch house on Pinewood Drive for one beautiful reason. It sat outside the Willowbrook Estates HOA. No lawn police, no paint approval committees, no Karens measuring my grass height with rulers. Sophia and I had our weekend ritual. She'd crawl under my restored '87 Bronco, handing me tools and asking questions that would stump a NASA engineer. "Daddy, why does the carburetor sound angry?" The sweet mixture of motor oil and WD-40 became our father-daughter perfume. I was teaching her real-life skills, how to fix things instead of calling someone else to do it. Then Constance Blackwood entered our lives like a designer hurricane. Picture your stereotypical HOA dictator, then add a real estate license and delusions of royalty. 52, been HOA president for 7 years, drives a white BMW that costs more than most people make in a year, always wearing pearls like she's expecting a photo shoot with Better Homes and Gardens, lives in a 920K McMansion, and treats the neighborhood like her personal fiefdom. The trouble started when I parked the Bronco in my driveway for a brake job. Teaching Sophia how hydraulic systems work, instead of letting screens raise my kid. Day 1, peaceful mechanical education. Day 7, here comes Constance, clicking across the street in designer heels with a stack of HOA bylaws thick enough to stop bullets. "Mr. Rivera, that eyesore violates our community standards." I'm elbow deep in brake fluid, Sophia giggling as she tries to pronounce hydraulic. "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not in your HOA. Her perfectly made-up face went through more color changes than a mood ring. "Impossible. Everyone follows our standards." "Check your boundary maps," I said, wiping grease on a rag. "My lot's exempt." She stormed off, heels hammering the asphalt like an angry typewriter. 2 weeks later, certified letters started flooding my mailbox. Official letterhead demanding $200 daily fines for aesthetic violations and, get this, unauthorized commercial automotive operation. Commercial operation? Lady, I was teaching my kid how brakes work, not running a chop shop. Sophia watched me open each threatening letter, her face scrunched in that worried way kids get when adults act crazy. "Why is the angry lady mad at our truck, Daddy?" How do you explain to a 9-year-old that some people peak in high school and spend the rest of their lives trying to boss everyone else around? By month 2, Constance was organizing her army of suburban soldiers, neighbors who probably iron their shoelaces, to photograph my violations. 23 pictures of my Bronco sitting peacefully in my own driveway like some kind of criminal evidence. Our garage wasn't just a workspace. It was Sophia's real classroom, the rough texture of sandpaper teaching her patience, the satisfying click of socket wrenches showing her that problems have solutions, the pride in her eyes when we got the engine purring perfectly. That's education money can't buy. And this entitled real estate queen thought she could steal that from us because my classic truck didn't match her suburban Stepford vision. Here's what made it worse. As a single dad, legal fights could bankrupt us. Moving would rip Sophia away from her school, her friends, everything stable in her world. I'd bought this house specifically for our independence from exactly this kind of petty tyranny. But Constance made one crucial error. She assumed I'd fold like every other neighbor she'd bullied into submission. Figured one Army vet would salute her authority and shuffle away quietly. She was about to learn why you never corner a soldier protecting his family. 3 months in, Constance decided to escalate to nuclear warfare. She called an emergency HOA board meeting because apparently my Bronco constituted a community crisis ranking somewhere between locusts and alien invasion. The official agenda item? External property threats to community standards. I kid you not. My truck was officially classified as a threat to suburban civilization. Within a week, I received legal correspondence from Pinnacle Legal Solutions, letterhead so fancy it probably cost more to print than my monthly grocery budget. They demanded I remove my non-conforming vehicle within 72 hours or face aggressive enforcement action. But the real kicker? The HOA voted to install security cameras for perimeter monitoring. Translation: they were going full Big Brother to build a harassment case against a single dad and his 9-year-old. Time for some detective work. Sophia and I loaded up the Bronco for an educational field trip to the county recorder's office. She bounced in the passenger seat, treating it like an adventure. Why do we need old papers, Daddy? Because sometimes bullies count on people not knowing their rights, sweetheart. We're going treasure hunting. The basement records office smelled like old books and government coffee, that distinctly bureaucratic aroma of filing cabinets and fluorescent lights. Sophia helped organize property documents, while Mrs. Patterson, the clerk, spread out subdivision maps across a table the size of a pool table. My daughter traced boundary lines with her finger like she was solving a puzzle. "This is our house," she announced, pointing to our lot. "And see, there's a special line around it." Smart kid. That special line marked our agricultural exemption from 1986, grandfathered protection that I remembered from my Army days studying property law during base housing disputes. Agricultural exemptions in original subdivision plats create permanent immunity from later HOA authority, even for residential properties. It's like constitutional protection for your land. Once exempt, always exempt. But here's where the story gets delicious. Mrs. Patterson casually mentioned that Constance had requested boundary modifications 4 separate times over 3 years. 4 times. All denied because my exemption status couldn't be overruled. She knew, I explained to Sophia as we walked back to our truck. The whole time she knew she couldn't touch us. The plot thickened when I checked the property history. The previous owner died owing the HOA $15,000 in disputed fees. And guess whose real estate firm handled the estate sale? Our friend Constance. She'd known exactly what she was walking into, trying to intimidate the new guy into paying someone else's debts. Time to bring in professional help. I found Diana Restrepo, a civil rights attorney who specialized in HOA abuse cases. Her office walls were covered with victory photos, David versus Goliath stories where ordinary homeowners beat corrupt associations. "Do you have documentation?" was her first question. Sophia giggled from her chair. "Daddy has 3 whole boxes." Diana's eyes lit up reviewing our evidence. Certified letters, recorded phone calls, photographs of Constance trespassing. We'd accidentally built a prosecutor's dream case. Diana explained that real estate agents face automatic license review for misrepresenting property boundaries in transactions, especially when they profit from the confusion. While Diana filed complaints with the State Real Estate Commission and requested harassment injunctions, I installed my own security system. If Constance wanted surveillance, she'd get surveillance, pointed right back at her. The community ripple effect started immediately. Patricia Vance appeared at my door one evening, nervously glancing around like she was about to confess state secrets. "Marcus, I have to tell you something. Constance threatened me with excessive decorative violations if I talk to you. I have 3 garden gnomes, Marcus, 3 tiny ceramic gnomes, and she called them aesthetic terrorism." I couldn't help laughing. Ceramic terrorism? What's next? Prosecuting lawn flamingos for disturbing the peace? Jerry from the auto parts store called that weekend, chuckling. "You stirred up something, brother. Had 8 customers this week asking about property boundary laws. Haven't sold this many survey stakes in years. One guy's measuring his entire lot with a tape measure." Even the elementary school pickup line buzzed with whispered conversations. Sophia reported that her friends were asking, "Is your daddy really fighting the mean HOA lady?" She loved being the center of attention for something positive. The satisfying mechanical rhythm of my 3-hole punch echoed through our kitchen as I organized court filings. Sophia sat across the table practicing math homework, occasionally looking up to ask, "Are we winning yet, Daddy?" We're building something bigger than winning, sweetheart. We're building justice. My new security cameras captured gold within the first week. Constance marching up my driveway at 6:47 a.m., placing another bogus violation notice on my windshield. The irony was beautiful. She was trespassing on property she claimed authority over but legally couldn't even touch. High-definition evidence of harassment, trespassing, and false legal claims, all time-stamped and archived. But I should have known Constance wouldn't go quietly. Her next escalation would make everything so far look like gentle persuasion. Game on, lady. Game on. 6 weeks later, Constance dropped the nuclear option. She called the county sheriff claiming I was operating an illegal automotive repair business and creating public safety hazards. At 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 patrol cars rolled up like I was Pablo Escobar instead of a single dad teaching his kid how to change brake fluid. Deputy Rodriguez emerged looking like he'd rather be chasing actual criminals. "Sir, we have a complaint about commercial vehicle operations." I stood there in pajamas, coffee mug in hand, watching this suburban SWAT raid unfold. "Officer, I'm not running a business. I'm teaching my daughter basic life skills." But there was Constance, fully dressed and made up at dawn like she'd been camping out waiting for this moment. "He's violating zoning ordinances. Look at all that dangerous automotive equipment." She pointed dramatically at my floor jack and socket set. Apparently, teaching your kid to change oil was now grounds for federal intervention. "Ma'am," I said, producing my property documents from the kitchen counter where they lived permanently now. "I'm not in your HOA. This is all documented with the county." Deputy Rodriguez studied the papers, clearly wondering why his Tuesday morning involved mediating a property dispute that belonged in civil court. But Constance cranked her hysteria to 11. "I don't care what those fake papers say. He threatened me. He's operating a chop shop. Arrest him right now." Here's where everything went catastrophically wrong. The deputy, pressured by Constance's banshee-level shrieking and apparently unaware that HOAs can't actually override constitutional property rights, made the career-ending decision to arrest me. The handcuffs clicked shut just as Sophia's face appeared at our living room window. That image, my 9-year-old daughter watching her father get arrested for telling the truth, burned into my memory like acid. The confusion and terror in her eyes as 3 grown men treated Daddy like a criminal for parking in his own driveway. The metallic taste of adrenaline flooded my mouth as neighbors emerged with phones recording this circus. The sharp morning air mixed diesel fumes from patrol cars with the sweet scent of honeysuckle from our unfenced yard, freedom's perfume being crushed by suburban tyranny. At the station, Sergeant Williams took one look at the arrest report and nearly exploded. "Rodriguez, what the hell? You arrested a homeowner for parking on his own property?" The booking sergeant pulled up Constance's call history and started laughing, the kind of bitter laugh cops develop after dealing with too many Karens. 52 calls in 12 months. The woman had dialed 911 for ice cream truck music being aggressively cheerful, children's chalk art constituting vandalism, and someone's garden wind chimes creating psychological noise torture. "She's our frequent flyer for suburban emergencies," he explained, releasing my handcuffs. "Sorry, sir. This arrest was completely improper. I learned something important during those 2 hours in custody. Back in my Army days, we studied civil rights law during military police training. When government officials arrest someone for exercising constitutional rights, that triggers Federal Section 1983 liability, basically the legal equivalent of stepping on a landmine that explodes lawsuits." Diana Restrepo's reaction was swift and surgical. "Marcus, Constance just handed us a federal civil rights case on a silver platter. False imprisonment, constitutional violations, emotional distress. We're going for everything." She filed in federal court targeting the HOA, Constance personally, and the county. But while building our case, Diana's forensic accountant uncovered something beautiful. The HOA had blown $31,000 on legal fees funding Constance's personal enforcement crusade. Here's the kicker. The board members had no clue. Constance had been authorizing legal spending without disclosure, and now every homeowner faced a $1,500 special assessment to fund her harassment campaigns. "She's been spending other people's money to harass people who aren't even her problem," Diana explained during our strategy meeting. "That's textbook fraud." Sophia colored in legal pads during these sessions, occasionally piping up with questions like, "Will the mean lady have to say sorry?" If only it were that simple, sweetheart. The The community reaction exploded like a shaken soda bottle. Patricia organized coffee meetings that turned into full-scale rebellion planning sessions. Jerry's hardware store became resistance headquarters, complete with property law printouts taped to the walls. Mrs. Violet called about Sophia's trauma. "She's been drawing police cars all week, Marcus. No child should watch their parent get arrested for doing nothing wrong." The local newspaper editor practically salivated over the story. "Single dad arrested by HOA tyrant" was front-page gold, especially with federal civil rights angles. But my favorite moment came watching security footage of Constance reading Diana's federal lawsuit filing. Standing in my driveway, still trespassing by the way, her face cycled through confusion, rage, and pure panic as she realized she'd escalated a property dispute into federal court. The woman who called the cops on me for exercising basic property rights was about to discover what real legal consequences feel like. And we were just getting started. 2 months after my arrest, Constance went full scorched earth. She hired a private investigator to document my commercial activities, because apparently teaching Sophia how to change spark plugs required professional surveillance worthy of the CIA. The PI showed up in an unmarked van, sitting across the street with telephoto lenses like he was tracking international arms dealers instead of a dad teaching his kid about carburetors. Sophia thought it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. "Daddy, why is that man taking pictures of our truck?" she asked, waving enthusiastically at the camera. "Because some people have more money than sense, sweetheart. Want to give him something interesting to photograph?" We spent the afternoon teaching Sophia how to check tire pressure while she narrated everything loudly enough for the surveillance microphones. "Now Daddy's showing me how to use the gauge. This is totally normal father-daughter bonding, not a commercial operation." But Constance's desperation was showing cracks. She attempted leveraging her real estate connections to pressure City Councilman David Violet, hoping political influence could override constitutional property rights. She organized another emergency homeowner meeting, this time claiming Sophia's safety was threatened by our hazardous automotive activities. The woman literally weaponized child safety concerns against the child she'd traumatized with my wrongful arrest. You can't make this stuff up. Then she crossed the line that destroyed her remaining credibility. She began systematically intimidating neighbors who supported me, threatening enforcement action against anyone who dared question her authority. Patricia Vance appeared at my door one evening, hands shaking as she held a certified letter. "Marcus," she came to my house, said if I kept consorting with troublemakers, she'd find code violations that would cost me thousands. Consorting? I nearly choked on my coffee. What is this, the Spanish Inquisition? Next she'll be testing people for witchcraft. But Constance's private investigator turned out to be her biggest tactical error. Professional PIs have licensing requirements and ethical obligations. When he confirmed my property was legally exempt from HOA authority, he was required to report findings accurately regardless of what his client wanted to hear. His official report became our smoking gun, documenting the HOA's systematic harassment of multiple non-member property owners. The pattern was unmistakable. Constance had been running a neighborhood protection racket disguised as community standards enforcement. Meanwhile, Diana's forensic accountant struck pure gold. Those mysterious legal fees hiding in HOA budget reports? Constance's real estate firm had received $67,000 in consulting fees over 3 years, payments authorized by board votes where she never disclosed her massive financial interest. The consulting services included property value assessments and enforcement strategy development. Translation: Constance was paying herself with neighbors' money to harass people and artificially inflate her real estate commissions. I remembered studying conflict of interest laws during Army procurement training. When officials profit personally from decisions they make professionally, that's textbook corruption. Real estate agents face automatic license suspension for undisclosed financial interests, especially when public authority is involved. The crisp autumn air carried the sweet scent of burning leaves from my unrestricted property as I reviewed evidence files with Sophia. She helped organize documents, treating it like the world's most important homework assignment. "Daddy, are we really going to beat the mean lady?" "We're going to do something better, sweetheart. We're going to show everyone that bullies can't win when good people fight back." City Councilman Violet, initially supportive due to Constance's campaign contributions, developed sudden amnesia about their friendship when I presented documented evidence of systematic fraud. Politicians smell electoral disaster from miles away. Perhaps this should be resolved through proper legal channels, he quietly suggested during a recorded phone conversation that mysteriously appeared in Diana's files. My security cameras captured a greatest hits compilation: Constance trespassing to place bogus violation notices, the PI photographing through Sophia's bedroom window, hello, potential stalking charges, attempted intimidation of elderly neighbors afraid to fight back. The community organizing reached revolutionary proportions. Patricia formally demanded a complete HOA financial audit. Jerry's hardware store hosted weekly constitutional rights defense meetings that grew from 5 neighbors to 43. Even Sophia's teacher, Mrs. Violet, joined, expressing concern about children witnessing institutional bullying. The local newspaper committed to a 5-part investigative series, the HOA Crime Files, starting with my wrongful arrest and expanding into systematic financial corruption. Diana outlined our expanded legal strategy while Sophia practiced violin in the next room, the sound of beautiful music mixing with plans for beautiful justice. Marcus, we're not just seeking damages anymore. We're documenting a criminal enterprise. When HOAs systematically target protected classes, they lose all legal immunity. The most devastating discovery came from state housing records. Constance had been specifically targeting families with children, elderly residents on fixed incomes, and anyone who looked unable to afford legal representation. The discriminatory enforcement pattern violated Federal Fair Housing Act protections. 3 board members quietly approached Diana, requesting whistleblower protection in exchange for testimony about Constance's criminal operations. The woman who'd tried destroying us with imaginary authority was about to face very real federal accountability. But cornered animals lash out at what matters most to their enemies. And nothing mattered more to me than the little girl practicing violin in the next room. The call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Diana's voice crackled with electricity and barely contained fury. "Marcus, sit down. We just blew this case wide open." Her forensic accountant had been pulling financial threads for weeks, but what they'd discovered was criminal conspiracy that made my harassment look like amateur hour. The HOA wasn't just broke, it was $89,000 in the hole. Constance's enforcement campaigns had burned through $142,000 in legal fees, completely draining maintenance reserves and borrowing against future assessments to fund current battles. But here's the nuclear revelation. Bank records showed Constance's business entities receiving $97,000 in HOA consulting payments over 3 years. $97,000 of neighbor money flowing directly into her personal accounts. The services were completely fabricated. Compliance monitoring that only targeted non-HOA properties. Property value strategies that consisted of harassing families with children. Legal consultation that was actually billing coordination to maximize attorney hours on frivolous cases. Sophia wandered into the kitchen in dinosaur pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Daddy, why are you talking so loud?" "The bad lady stole money, sweetheart, and now everyone's going to find out." The metallic taste of adrenaline flooded my mouth as Diana explained the perfect storm. The HOA's insurance excluded coverage for criminal acts by board members, meaning Constance faced personal bankruptcy. Board members could claim deception, but she was looking at federal prison. Here's what shifted everything. I finally understood Constance's desperation. The harassment wasn't about neighborhood standards, it was about preventing the financial audit that would expose years of systematic theft. She wasn't a power-hungry dictator, she was a cornered embezzler using community authority to hide federal felonies. The original HOA covenants included emergency dissolution clauses for financial mismanagement. Simple majority vote could trigger state attorney general investigation and force complete restructuring. 17 families had grounds for recovering illegal assessments they'd paid to fund Constance's profit machine. Diana pulled property records showing the discrimination pattern. 5 board members were delinquent on special assessments but faced 0 enforcement. Meanwhile, she'd filed 67 violations against families with school-aged children. The selective enforcement violated Fair Housing Act protections, federal civil rights conspiracy when you systematically target protected classes. "Marcus," Diana's voice carried the weight of revelation, "this stopped being a property dispute months ago. We're documenting organized crime using municipal authority." The psychological understanding hit like lightning. Every escalation, every desperate move. It wasn't about controlling me. It was about preventing investigation that would send her to federal prison. Sophia had become collateral damage in an adult criminal enterprise designed to steal from families and terrorize potential witnesses. The community impact was staggering. 23 families paid unnecessary assessments funding Constance's ventures. 4 elderly residents moved away rather than fight harassment they couldn't afford to combat. The social fabric had been systematically poisoned by one person's greed disguised as civic duty. Property values were declining not because of my Bronco, but because toxic HOA reputations spread faster than wildfire. Who buys into communities where presidents steal money and traumatize children? The rich aroma of late-night coffee mixed with the sweet scent of justice as I processed the full scope. This wasn't David versus Goliath. This was exposing criminal conspiracy that had been poisoning our community for years. Diana outlined federal racketeering charges under RICO statutes. When someone uses official authority for multiple felonies over time, that's organized crime worthy of anti-mafia legal weapons. We're not seeking damages anymore, she explained, as Sophia dozed against my shoulder. We're dismantling a criminal operation masquerading as community governance. The evidence was overwhelming. The corruption systematic. The federal charges would be devastating. But first, we needed to set the perfect trap. The war room was my kitchen table at 5 a.m., documents spread like D-Day invasion plans while Sophia ate Lucky Charms and offered strategic advice that would make Pentagon generals jealous. Daddy, why don't we just tell everyone she's a bad person? Because, sweetheart, bad people are sneaky. We need proof so good that even other bad people have to admit she's guilty. Diana arrived with 3 boxes of evidence and enough caffeine to power a small city. We're going nuclear, she announced, unveiling a federal lawsuit that read like a prosecutor's fever dream. Civil rights violations, fraud, conspiracy, child endangerment, the legal equivalent of carpet bombing. The complaint demanded injunctive relief, monetary damages, and federal court-ordered HOA dissolution. But here's the genius part. We timed everything for maximum public exposure during Constance's inevitable criminal trial, ensuring her destruction would be broadcast to every news outlet in the state. I upgraded to professional security systems that would make NSA agents weep with envy. Time-lapse photography, crystal-clear audio recording, motion sensors covering every square inch. If Constance so much as breathed wrong on my property, we'd capture it in courtroom-quality evidence. Sophia transformed evidence organization into the world's most serious game of filing. This goes in trespassing, she announced with judicial authority, and this goes in being extra mean to nice people. Meanwhile, Diana's forensic accountant went full detective mode on 5 years of HOA records. Every suspicious dollar got traced, cataloged, and cross-referenced with surgical precision. Additional discoveries kept rolling in, $73,000 in emergency repairs that never happened, kickback schemes disguised as vendor payments, insurance fraud claims for vandalism that security footage proved was fabricated. The rich aroma of brewing justice mixed with morning coffee as we assembled the legal equivalent of an atomic bomb. Sophia helped organize bank statements with the concentration of a Supreme Court clerk, occasionally asking questions that cut straight to the heart of everything. Will the mean lady have to give back all the money she stole? Every single penny, plus interest, plus punishment money for being so mean. Patricia's living room became coalition headquarters for 31 victimized families funding comprehensive audits. Jerry's hardware store evolved into the neighborhood's unofficial law school, complete with property rights handouts taped to the walls like revolutionary propaganda. I started teaching weekend workshops, constitutional rights for normal people. Families learned county records research, smartphone evidence documentation, small claims court procedures for recovering stolen fees. From my Army days, I knew that informed citizens are democracy's best weapon against institutional corruption. The media strategy orchestrated like a symphony. Local investigative reporter committed to the HOA Crime Files series. National Consumer Show confirmed our David versus Criminal Enterprise story. Sophia's art teacher created visual harassment timelines that would make courtroom presentations devastatingly effective. But Diana's technical trap was pure legal artistry. Federal Freedom of Information Act requests forced disclosure of every communication, every meeting recording, every vendor contract they'd tried hiding. Missing or altered records meant additional federal obstruction charges, basically giving them rope to hang themselves. While we built our evidence fortress, federal agencies opened investigations like dominoes falling. FBI Financial Crimes Unit, State Attorney General, IRS Tax Fraud Division. The alphabet soup of justice was converging on Constance like a legal hurricane. What I love about civil rights law, Diana explained while Sophia colored legal briefs, is mandatory attorney fee recovery. They pay our costs whether we win or lose, but we're definitely winning. I remembered from military police training that organized crimes using official authority trigger RICO prosecutions. Federal prosecutors treat corrupt officials like mafia bosses. When you systematically steal money while wearing government badges, you get the full organized crime treatment. The financial pressure accelerated beautifully. Insurance policy canceled. Bank accounts frozen. Board members fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. Constance's real estate license suspended automatically once criminal referrals were filed. Sophia's suggestion became our crown jewel. Victim recovery funds would purchase playground equipment. Constance's stolen money transformed into joy for the children she'd terrorized. Poetic justice at its finest. Evening document prep became family time. Sophia practiced violin while I organized evidence, Mozart's music mixing with constitutional law in perfect harmony. Daddy, after we beat the bad lady, will other kids be safe from mean grown-ups? That's exactly why we're fighting, sweetheart, so no other little girl has to watch her daddy get handcuffed for telling the truth. Federal prosecutors salivate over cases with sympathetic victims, overwhelming evidence, and defendants who've used official power for personal crimes. We were serving them a legal Christmas feast, but the perfect trap needed one final element: getting Constance to confess everything on federal recording equipment. Time to dangle the bait and watch her destroy herself completely. With federal charges circling like vultures, Constance went full panic mode. She called an emergency board meeting to authorize a $75,000 legal settlement, basically trying to buy her way out of federal prison using other people's money. But desperation makes people spectacularly stupid. She decided to destroy financial records before the court-ordered discovery deadline, apparently forgetting that federal obstruction of justice comes with mandatory minimum sentences that don't care about your manicure budget. Jerry called me at 2:17 a.m., barely containing his laughter. "Marcus, you gotta see this. Constance is in my parking lot with a paper shredder and 3 banker boxes, looking like the world's worst spy." My security cameras captured her midnight evidence destruction party in beautiful 4K resolution. Picture a woman in designer pajamas frantically feeding documents into a shredder while looking over her shoulder every 30 seconds. Sophia watched the footage over her Lucky Charms, fascinated. "Daddy, why is the mean lady eating papers with that machine?" "Because guilty people do really dumb things when they're scared, sweetheart. Remember this moment. It's called evidence of consciousness of guilt." But Constance's most desperate move was showing up at my door with a briefcase full of cash, apparently thinking real life works like Netflix crime dramas. "Mr. Rivera," she said, clicking open the case like some suburban Tony Soprano, "we can make all this unpleasantness disappear. 25,000, cash, no questions asked." The crisp smell of actual money mixed with her expensive perfume as I stared at more cash than Sophia's college fund. For about half a second, I understood why people make bad choices. Then I called Diana on speakerphone. "Diana, Constance just tried bribing me with a suitcase full of money. Please tell me you're recording this." Every beautiful word. Attempted bribery of a federal witness just added 5 years to her sentence. Ew. Constance's face went through more color changes than a mood ring as the reality hit her. She'd just committed a federal felony while trying to cover up other federal felonies. The mini twist that sealed her doom came from board treasurer Margaret Violet, who approached me after federal subpoenas arrived. Margaret had been silent for months, terrorized by Constance's threats against her family's restaurant business. "Marcus," she whispered, pressing a flash drive into my hand like a Cold War spy. I kept copies of everything she thought she destroyed. 5 years of real financial records showing $187,000 in theft. She said if I ever talked, she'd make sure we failed health inspections. Federal prosecutors love cooperative witnesses, especially ones carrying smoking gun evidence. Meanwhile, I kept documenting harassment while pretending to consider settlement offers. Let Constance believe private money could prevent federal prosecution. The longer she lived in that fantasy, the more crimes she'd commit trying to escape. Sophia organized evidence parties with neighborhood kids, turning constitutional law into community fun. Nothing teaches civic responsibility like children helping their parents fight institutional corruption with juice boxes and determination. My upgraded security system captured prosecutorial gold. Constance directing loyalist neighbors to file coordinated false reports, recorded phone calls threatening board members with enforcement consequences, bank records showing suspicious cash withdrawals coinciding with major harassment campaigns. The federal investigation steamrolled forward. FBI Financial Crimes Unit confirmed systematic mail fraud and money laundering charges. When you use official letterhead to threaten innocent families while stealing community funds, federal prosecutors call that Tuesday morning's work. Community pressure reached volcanic levels. 43 families demanded criminal prosecution. Emergency HOA dissolution petition gained 156 signatures. Local Chamber of Commerce expressed serious concerns about neighborhood reputation. Nobody wants to do business in Corruption Central. Sophia's school presentation became legendary. She explained to second graders, "My daddy is teaching mean grown-ups that having fancy titles doesn't mean you can steal money and be mean to families," her teacher called that evening. Marcus, Sophia's presentation on civic responsibility was remarkable. She's inspiring other children to ask their parents about community involvement. The federal wire operation was pure legal poetry. FBI agents fitted me with recording equipment for settlement negotiations, creating a trap where every word Constance spoke became courtroom-quality evidence. The recorded conversation was confession perfection. "Look, Marcus, maybe I was aggressive about enforcement. But property values don't maintain themselves. Sometimes you have to be firm with people who don't get how neighborhoods work." By stealing nearly $100,000, that wasn't theft. That was earned compensation. Do you understand the work involved in maintaining community standards? The late nights, the difficult decisions, the personal attacks I've endured? You mean like calling police on innocent fathers? You forced my hand. If you'd just complied like everyone else, none of this would have happened. Federal prosecutors couldn't have written better confessions. Self-incrimination, admission of systematic targeting, clear consciousness of guilt. It was like Christmas morning in the U.S. Attorney's Office. The sweet sound of federal indictments being typed echoed through courthouse offices while Sophia drew pictures of courtrooms with stick figures labeled "good guys" and "bad lady." Constance's world crumbled systematically. Real estate firm terminated her to avoid criminal association. Insurance companies canceled policies citing ongoing federal investigation. Personal bankruptcy loomed as legal fees mounted and civil judgments accumulated. But the public destruction hadn't even started yet. Time to spring the perfect trap and watch her annihilate herself on live television. As federal indictments loomed, Constance launched her final desperate sabotage campaign. She attempted having my utilities disconnected by filing fraudulent HOA liens, apparently believing she could freeze me out by cutting off water and electricity. The utility company's response was swift and brutal. They reported the fraudulent lien attempt directly to federal investigators. Turns out, using false legal documents to harass federal witnesses is the kind of mistake that gets you additional felony charges. But Constance wasn't done digging her grave deeper. She filed a restraining order claiming I'd been stalking and threatening her during the federal investigation. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The woman who'd been harassing my family for months was now claiming to be the victim. Judge Harrison took one look at her petition and nearly laughed her out of court. "Ms. Blackwood, you're alleging stalking by a man who's been documenting your harassment of his family? Motion denied with prejudice." Then came her most spectacularly stupid move yet. At 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, my security cameras captured Constance personally vandalizing my Bronco with her car keys, trying to create evidence that my presence was causing neighborhood deterioration. Sophia watched the footage over breakfast, shaking her head with 9-year-old wisdom. "Daddy, the mean lady is making herself more trouble." "That's exactly right, sweetheart. Sometimes bad people are their own worst enemy." But here's where it gets beautiful. Constance attempted bribing County Building Inspector Tom Rodriguez to condemn my house as structurally unsafe. She offered him $2,000 cash to find non-existent violations that would force us to move. Rodriguez, being an honest public servant, immediately reported the bribery attempt to federal authorities and provided a recorded conversation that became Exhibit A in her expanding criminal case. The mini twist that destroyed her last hope came when the remaining HOA board discovered she'd forged an emergency resolution authorizing $85,000 for criminal defense using community funds. They found out when federal agents questioned suspicious bank withdrawals during their money laundering investigation. Margaret Violet went public with 5 years of suppressed evidence during an explosive board meeting that Patricia live-streamed on Facebook. She threatened my family's business if I ever disclosed her financial crimes. I have documents proving $187,000 in stolen community funds. The emergency board vote was unanimous. Remove Constance as president and ban her from all HOA property. Even her loyalist supporters abandoned ship when faced with potential criminal liability. Federal criminal charges materialized like a legal avalanche. U.S. Attorney's Office filed a 23-count indictment: fraud, conspiracy, civil rights violations, money laundering, bribery, obstruction of justice. The federal prosecutor called it one of the most comprehensive abuses of community authority in state history. Real Estate Commission permanently revoked her license following federal criminal charges. Professional boards don't mess around with felony fraud convictions. Her career was legally dead. Diana's reaction was pure professional satisfaction. Marcus, they've charged her with enough federal crimes to put her away for 20 years, and every single charge carries mandatory restitution to victims. The community mobilization reached revolutionary proportions. 289 homeowners signed petitions demanding federal HOA reform legislation. 7 neighboring communities requested assistance fighting similar criminal enterprises. Property values began recovering as word spread about the corruption finally ending. Sophia became a local celebrity. Her elementary school invited her to speak about standing up to bullies at the district-wide assembly. She explained to 400 kids, "Sometimes grown-ups do really bad things, but good people can stop them if they don't give up." The federal evidence collection was staggering. 1,247 hours of surveillance video documenting systematic harassment, $312,000 in fraudulent expenditures traced to personal accounts, 67 false police reports filed over 3 years, 234 documented violations of federal civil rights and mail fraud statutes. National media attention exploded like fireworks. Congressional HOA Reform Caucus adopted our case as primary evidence for federal legislation. Civil rights organizations provided legal support for precedent-setting federal prosecution. Justice for Marcus and Sophia reached 1.8 million social media shares nationwide. But the most satisfying moment came during Constance's arrest warrant execution. Federal marshals appeared at her door with cameras rolling, serving criminal indictments while neighbors cheered from their driveways. Her criminal defense attorney advised immediate plea negotiations to avoid life sentences. Federal prosecutors rarely lose RICO cases with documentary evidence and cooperative witnesses. Diana outlined our guaranteed victory during a celebratory dinner while Sophia colored federal court forms like the world's youngest legal assistant. Marcus, the civil case is essentially over. Criminal conviction guarantees civil liability. Federal mandatory attorney fee recovery means they pay every penny of our legal costs. Punitive damages will likely exceed $500,000. The sweet aroma of complete vindication filled our kitchen as we planned the final public confrontation. Sophia helped organize witness lists for the federal sentencing hearing, where justice would finally be served with maximum community visibility. Daddy, when the bad lady goes to court, will everyone see that good people can beat bullies? That's exactly what's going to happen, sweetheart. And every family in America will know that standing up for what's right always wins in the end. Constance's criminal trial was scheduled for maximum media coverage during federal court's most visible session. Congressional representatives confirmed attendance to announce comprehensive HOA reform legislation inspired by our victory. The perfect storm of criminal justice, civil rights vindication, and legislative reform was about to converge in federal court. Time for the ultimate public reckoning. The federal courthouse steps buzzed with more media attention than a presidential scandal. CNN, NBC, Fox. Every major network had cameras positioned for the federal sentencing hearing that would make legal history. Standing room only courtroom, with overflow crowds watching live streams on courthouse monitors. Sophia sat in the front row wearing her best dress, ready to deliver victim impact testimony that would break hearts and change laws. Judge Catherine Morrison called the hearing to order as camera flashes lit up the courtroom like lightning. This case represents one of the most egregious abuses of community authority in federal court history. I approached the witness stand carrying 3 years of documented trauma, while Sophia watched with the quiet dignity of a child who'd seen her father fight injustice and win. Your Honor, my daughter watched me get arrested for exercising constitutional rights on my own property. She learned that adults sometimes abuse power to hurt innocent families. But she also learned that justice exists when good people refuse to surrender. The courtroom screens displayed devastating evidence, time-lapse video of systematic harassment, audio recordings of Constance threatening families, financial charts showing $312,000 diverted from community funds to personal accounts. Sophia's artwork filled the visual presentation, before and after drawings showing our neighborhood under criminal rule versus democratic freedom. Her 9-year-old perspective captured the human cost of institutional corruption better than any expert testimony. Then came the ultimate mic drop moment. Federal prosecutor Amanda Sterling announced, "Your Honor, during this investigation, we discovered the defendant attempted to bribe an FBI agent conducting financial crimes surveillance. She offered Agent Rodriguez $10,000 to lose evidence files." The courtroom gasped. Even Constance's attorney looked shocked. Bribing federal agents during active investigations is legal suicide, automatic additional felony charges with mandatory minimum sentences. Judge Morrison's voice carried the weight of constitutional justice. "Ms. Blackwood, you systematically violated the civil rights of families with children, stole hundreds of thousands in community funds, and attempted to corrupt federal law enforcement. This court finds your actions constitute organized criminal enterprise under RICO statutes. Federal marshals executed asset seizure warrants during the live broadcast. Bank accounts, real estate holdings, luxury vehicles, everything Constance owned became victim restitution property. Sheriff Martinez, who'd originally arrested me improperly, publicly apologized during the court proceedings. Mr. Rivera, I failed to protect your constitutional rights. This department has implemented new training preventing civil rights violations." But the most powerful moment came when Sophia approached the victim impact microphone. "The bad lady made my daddy get arrested for parking our truck. She scared me and made me cry. But my daddy taught me that good people can beat bad people if they never give up fighting for what's right." Standing ovation. 3 minutes of thunderous applause that echoed through marble courthouse halls. Even federal marshals were wiping away tears. Judge Morrison delivered the sentence. 8 years federal prison without parole possibility. Complete asset forfeiture for victim restitution. Permanent ban from any community association involvement. $487,000 civil judgment, including punitive damages for constitutional rights violations. Congressional Representative Sarah Walsh took the courthouse steps microphone. This family's courage exposed systematic criminal abuse hidden behind community authority. Today, we announce the Federal Homeowners Protection Act, ensuring no family faces harassment for exercising constitutional property rights. The crowd reaction was pure catharsis. 400 community members celebrating as 3 years of systematic harassment finally ended with complete justice. National news outlets declared our victory a watershed moment for property rights protection. Legal experts confirmed precedent-setting implications for HOA industry accountability. Sophia cut the ribbon on new playground equipment purchased with recovered criminal funds. Constance's stolen money transformed into joy for the children she'd terrorized. Local business leaders announced the Rivera Community Courage Award for families fighting institutional corruption. Property values jumped 23% within weeks as the toxic HOA reputation was replaced by justice celebration. But the most meaningful moment came during family interviews outside the courthouse. Sophia explained to reporters, "My daddy proved that one family can change laws for everyone. Bad people can't win when good people fight back together." Federal agents confirmed our case triggered 67 similar prosecutions nationwide. The precedent we established became required training in law schools and federal law enforcement academies. The sweet taste of complete vindication mixed with Sophia's excited chatter about playground plans as we walked home past neighbors celebrating in their driveways. Justice wasn't just served, it was delivered with constitutional authority that would protect families across America for generations. 6 months later, our neighborhood looked like a completely different place. The Willowbrook Democratic Community Association, formed from the ashes of Constance's criminal enterprise, operated with transparent governance and actual respect for property rights. The $312,000 in recovered criminal funds transformed our community. New playground equipment where Sophia and her friends played safely, walking trails connecting previously divided neighbors, a senior activity center where elderly residents socialized without fear of harassment. Property values increased 23% as word spread about our victory over institutional corruption. 15 neighboring communities adopted the Rivera model for preventing HOA criminal abuse through democratic oversight and financial transparency. But the personal healing meant everything to our family. The $487,000 federal civil rights judgment allowed me to establish Sophia's college fund while starting the Community Rights Education Foundation, offering free legal workshops to families fighting harassment nationwide. Sophia's confidence bloomed like spring flowers. She'd watched her father fight injustice through proper legal channels and win completely. Her elementary school created a civic responsibility curriculum inspired by our experience, teaching children that ordinary families can change laws when they refuse to surrender to bullies. Our weekend garage time returned to pure father-daughter bonding. Sophia learned advanced mechanics while I taught neighborhood kids practical skills. The space once threatened by harassment became a community workshop celebrating freedom and education. The Elena Winters Memorial Scholarship, named for the woman in Diana's first case who'd fought similar corruption, helped students study property law. The first recipient graduated law school and drafted model HOA accountability legislation adopted by 12 states. Constance served her full 8-year federal sentence with zero possibility of parole. Professional licenses permanently revoked, personal bankruptcy complete, criminal record ensuring unemployability in any position of authority. The woman who'd terrorized families for personal profit became a cautionary tale studied in federal law enforcement training. Congressional hearings featured our case as primary evidence for the Federal Homeowners Protection Act, creating nationwide oversight for community association financial management and establishing federal civil rights protections for property owners. But the most beautiful transformation was our neighborhood's social fabric. Annual Community Rights Festival celebrates democratic governance and children's safety. Block parties, community gardens, and collaborative projects replaced the surveillance and intimidation that once divided neighbors. Patricia organized the Property Owners' Rights Alliance, helping families in 23 states fight similar criminal enterprises. Jerry's hardware store expanded into a legal resource center, providing free property boundary research and harassment documentation training. Sophia's story inspired federal children's advocacy campaigns highlighting institutional bullying's impact on families. Her testimony before Congress, now age 10 and articulate beyond her years, helped pass landmark legislation protecting children from witnessing civil rights violations. The documentary Sophia's Fight: A Child's View of Justice won national awards and became required viewing in constitutional law courses. Father-daughter interviews demonstrated how ordinary families can create extraordinary change through persistence and proper legal channels. Local business district thrived as positive national attention attracted new residents and commerce. The Rivera Community Courage Award recognized families fighting corruption in education, healthcare, and government, spreading inspiration far beyond HOA reform. But my favorite moment comes every Saturday morning in our garage. Sophia, now mechanically skilled beyond most adults, teaches younger neighborhood kids while I supervise with coffee and pride. Remember, she tells 6-year-old Tommy while showing him proper wrench technique, when bad people try to boss you around, you get good people to help you fight back the right way. The sweet sounds of children learning life skills mixed with power tools and laughter filled the space where systematic harassment once threatened our family's security. Freedom's perfume, motor oil, WD-40, and unlimited possibility. Sophia looked up from teaching brake system basics, grease on her cheek and wisdom in her eyes. Daddy, do you think other kids will learn that good people can beat bad people? Sweetheart, we proved that one family's courage can change laws protecting everyone. Every child who hears your story learns that justice isn't just possible. It's inevitable when good people refuse to quit. The Community Rights Education Foundation continues helping families fight institutional harassment. Our legal workshops reach thousands annually, teaching property rights protection and harassment documentation. National civil rights organizations cite our precedent in federal cases protecting constitutional freedoms. Sophia's courage inspired legislative reform ensuring no other child watches their parent get arrested for exercising basic rights. Share your HOA nightmare in the comments. Our legal team reviews every story for potential federal action. Subscribe for more constitutional victories where ordinary families beat institutional corruption. Together, we're proving that justice isn't just an ideal. It's a reality when communities stand united against abuse of power. Remember, bullies count on good people staying quiet and giving up. But when families fight back through proper legal channels, supported by constitutional law and community solidarity, justice isn't just possible, it's guaranteed. Sophia and I proved that one father and daughter can change federal law protecting families everywhere. Your story might be next.